I don't recall it. But there was here a little bench right here. And I would come early in the morning and study. And I had the view of the city, which was, I think the trees were smaller, or it was the view was unobstructed. But basically, this is where I would study in the morning during high school exams. Right here.
And which high school did you go to?
It was the high school with Starbuck on Zavalna 4, and at a later time we are going to pass by my high school,
well, today
which is at the same place where Pearl used to live. And she lived in that house, in the same house.
Not the same house, next door.
Next door. She was on Zavalna 2, I think. Huh?
Yeah.
And the high school was Zavalna 4, which is now called Vilnius.
What did you find?
This is the house we lived in, on the first floor, facing
Yes.
the one.
And that is my high
Let's
school.
see, but I see this woman is coming in, so very possibly the door is open, and we can sneak in and look around.
This is number 4, and I don't know whether this was the entrance or the next door.
Yes.
Huh?
Huh. So you wanted to walk under her window every single day
Yeah, every day. Yeah.
for those 3 years. Did you
Yeah,
were
not, yeah, for the 3 years,
They
that's
were
right.
really
Yeah.
mischievous kids. They would ring the bell and run away.
Yeah, that was, yeah, we were quite
Probably only
mischievous.
him.
There was a dentist living on the downstairs on the first floor.
No, not on mine.
No, in number 4, and I am not sure whether it was here or there. And we would always go and ring the bell and run. And one time, the nurse or the maid of the dentist started to beat us up and beat me up with a broomstick and grabbed my head. Now this was winter time, and I came home without the head because she grabbed the head. And I was scared to death because they would complain to my teacher and to the school principal that I am the one, and they have the evidence of the head. And I was very uptight.
you got caught.
Very scared I got caught.
got
But
caught.
somehow, nothing too bad happened to me. I think one of my friends went and negotiated, and she gave it the head.
So
Yeah.
so you were about 13 and you were 7.
Yeah,
About 7 or 8?
yeah. Bad kid, huh?
So you walked from the castle over the bridge to here every day.
Every day, sure. It's not that far. I think, what would you estimate? A mile, huh?
Half a mile? Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, how many kids were in this high school? Was it a big high school or a...
Yeah, it was a rather big high school with, I cannot tell you. In my class, I would say there would be maybe 20, 25 kids. And many of them were from the city, and many came from the outskirts, from the different towns around Vilna. I mean, I was from Nemenchen. There were people from Svinciani, from a lot of places.
But their parents didn't move to the city.
Huh? No, they did not move. Their parents didn't move. They just were renting rooms and places in the city. But my family moved. Well, I mean, we were not that far. It was only 20 kilometers. So, huh?
Was this a Hebrew Yiddish high school or a
No,
Polish high school?
Hebrew, this was... Oh, you have to understand something very important. That there was here an organization among the kids called Bnei Yehuda, the sons of Judah. And we were supposed to talk Hebrew to everybody. No Yiddish, no Polish, no nothing. And we were very dedicated to revival of the language. And if somebody would be caught speaking Yiddish to a person who knew Hebrew, there would be always an informer. He spoke Yiddish. Can you imagine the sin, the transgression? He spoke Yiddish, or he spoke Polish. And that would not set too well with Mr. Steinhaus, who was my teacher of Hebrew. So we were very, very much terrorized about speaking only Hebrew. But the fact is, you learn a language. If you speak it, it stays with you. When I come to Israel, they never know that I'm not a local person, except my Hebrew is more classic, is better than the ordinary Israeli.
Huh? Less slang.
Less slang and better, more polished language, because we were studying the language very, very fundamentally.
But
What were you speaking?
This high school, though, was it in general, was it a Polish speaking or?
No. This was, let me explain to you something. This is important. The Hebrew high school, the teaching language was Hebrew. That means math and physics and chemistry and Jewish history and language and literature and grammar, all in Hebrew. But Polish geography, Polish history, Polish literature were in Polish. Then we studied Latin. And then there was a foreign language. And the foreign language you could choose either German or English or French. Now, the fashionable thing generally was French because it was the language of the diplomats. But the Zionists, and this was the cradle of Zionism in this school, learned English because Palestine was under British mandate. So people who were Zionists with the intent to eventually end up in Palestine when they grow up, were motivated and were promoted to take English.
That's interesting.
And our English teacher was the school principal, Dr. Lieber, an extremely educated man who spoke, I think it was said, he spoke 15 languages.
Wow.
And any language he knew, he was a perfectionist in it. And he was a real linguist. And when the Lithuanians came in '39, he did not know Lithuanian. And in a couple of months, he studied Lithuanian and became extremely proficient and was teaching us Lithuanian. He was also teaching us English.
Is that how you learned Lithuanian?
Yeah, that's how I learned Lithuanian. 2 years in school. Actually, 1 year in this school, and then when the Soviets came in summer '40, the Zionist and the Hebrew and anything to do with Jewish heritage and culture was abolished and forbidden and persecuted. So a group of our kids from this school went to Epstein's high school, which before the war was a Jewish school with the teaching language Polish. But at that time, it became a Yiddish school. And this school also, the teaching language became Yiddish. But we didn't want to desecrate the walls of this institution where we were so much indoctrinated into Zionism and Hebrew with the sound of Yiddish. So a group of us went to Epstein's school, which was a Yiddish teaching school, but previous to that it was Polish. And at that time, I was able to skip a grade because I knew Yiddish, but some of the Polish-speaking kids, like for example, her.
You spoke Polish when you were
I
growing
did
up
not
here.
know Yiddish until the ghetto.
I had to learn Yiddish, and that was something new to me, and was difficult.
Yeah.
So therefore since he knew Yiddish, he could skip grades.
So I skipped the grade,
whether
and a whole bunch of it, just a second. Skipped the grade, and this is how I finished, in 41 at the age of 17. And that saved my butt because I had a diploma with which I could enroll after the war, when I came to Italy, I could enroll to a medical school. And you know the story of the diploma. I carried it in my heel throughout the years of the war. It was a notary copy of my diploma, which I saved. But the Polish colonial, the class was, and I can tell you where I was sitting. I was sitting about this place here. Yeah. This is my class, and I can tell you that my chair was about here, and we were facing the teacher here. That's where I was sitting. Right here.
To the walls.
Huh? Yes, yeah. No, now because as we came up, I remembered it came back. Amazing, huh?
The windows are all the same.
But it looked to me so big.
So this is where, look at the light. The top building is huge. Perfect. And
Yeah, but I wanted to know, kids, this is my class.
That's the window
My
that
class.
spent all this
This
time
is the
daydreaming on.
No, you wouldn't daydream here. Their eyes were focused on each student. They were very disciplinary.
so how many students were here?
I would say in this classroom, we probably had 20 or 25 students.
20 or 25.
That was a class. I mean, that was
That
the
was a class,
whole,
yeah.
1 year. So the whole high school had 4 classes? maybe
Yeah,
100?
we had 6 days of schooling, 6 days a week,
6 days.
Sunday through Friday, not Saturday, yeah. And we had 7 hours a day with probably 10 minutes intermission between classes. And a lot of homework. I mean, a lot of homework. It wasn't anything that you could do in half an hour or an hour and a half. It was hours of work. Many hours of work. But I'll tell you, the graduates of this school, I need to explain you something. You see, this was a Jewish school, a Hebrew school, okay? But it had to conform to state standards. In other words, you had to have the curriculum that's required by the state in the secular studies in Polish and Polish history and literature and so on. Because otherwise, if it was not accredited by the Polish government, you could not apply with the diploma, with the maturity diploma, to the university. This was an accredited school, and also renowned in Poland. There were not that many high schools in Poland where the teaching language was Hebrew. This was one every now. So people from far away from Poland would come to study here. And there was also an acceptance criteria to accept students here. It was a private school. The parents had to pay, and if they couldn't afford, it was too bad. The kids couldn't go to school because it was maintained from private tuition, and there was no baloney. I mean, they didn't inquire about how are you depressed, are you moody, are you in bad mood. Nobody could care less. You had to study, and you had to produce
About
grades.
how many hours did you have to study? For how many hours?
I'll tell you, I was lucky. My best friend, Berele Kamenmacher, was a genius. And he was incredibly good in the humanities and in sciences. So we were doing homework together, which cut my hours, my time a lot. because we found he had an open head. I mean, everything would sink in his head. He was an extremely blank head. Okay, now this is where your entrance was, or what?
I think this
was the entrance.
What's it say there?
What is it? Do you know what it says there?
It's an office. I don't know what kind of an office.
Let's go in.
Well, can we go in?
Let's go in. This is the entrance to our apartment across the
You hear that, kids? Mike, this is the entrance to the apartment.
This is the entrance across the landing where the man called Labanauskas lived.
So tell the story that he was apparently drunk and put on the light. The war was going on.
So
And
the patrol, the Lithuanian patrol with the German went up and tried to arrest him. But so he immediately said, "Oh, it wasn't me at all. It was the Jews across the way." So they came and grabbed my father and our neighbors and took him to the guardhouse, and they were going to execute them. But then one of the soldiers said, "It's not true." Lithuanian soldier said, that's not true. It wasn't the Jew, it was him, Labanauskas.
And that was your neighbor.
that was the neighbor across the hall.
So they let your dad go.
So and this
Where
was
was
the
your
living
bedroom?
room. This was the living room.
Where?
It was all big hall parquet floor.
Move away or else you get knocked.
So I think I think that there is something else that I wanted to tell you about. After they were going to let my father go, there was curfew and they could not go back home. So they had to stay there all night. And it was terrible because they were bringing Jews and beating them to death there. But the same assessment that were beating everybody, my father was trying to mitigate them, talking German to them. So one of the assessment asked, "How come do you speak such good German?" So he says, "Oh, I am a graduate of the Political Science Institute in Berlin." "Oh," he says, "do you remember this and this cafe Kranzler in Berlin?" And my father said, "Of course I remember. It's on this and this street." You know, my father, the photographic memory. So he tells him all where this Kranzler is, and says, "You know what? I was the violinist in that in that cafe." So here he is. So he said, "Oh, you are not a Jew. You can't be a Jew. You are a good man. You go sit here, be quiet. When there's dawn, the curfew is over. I'll send you home." And they sent him home.
So they helped your father.
Yeah. Listen,
So there were two miracles on the same night.
Yeah.
One was
The Lithuanian
soldier. And the second one was the
German,
the assessment violinist.
Okay, wait. So this is where your house was?
No. To the right.
Right where that tree is?
The tree, well, and above, because it was a line of structures. Stables, the house, the stables. And as you can see here, and these trees were vacant. You follow?
What do you mean?
There were no trees here. There was a field full of beautiful flowers.
Oh, look at our favorite flower.
About here, and somewhere here, there were two trees with a
Swing?
swing. Yeah.
Yeah.
With a swing. Between two trees, there was a pole, and between two trees, and there was a huge swing. I mean, to me, as I remember it, and we would be swinging forth and back, and my mother would be always scared because I would go not just, parallel to the ground, but way up, almost to flip over. And she was screaming, "Don't go so high!" And I thought it was fun to go higher and higher. And it was incredibly beautiful. Then on the poles, I would climb up with my hands and feet. It was very tall. It was quite tall and very steady. And here we would play soccer. Now, over there was a road to go to the next village, to the right, and it was called Krivoloja, which was on the river, on the Vilja River. You hear the birds,
Oh,
the
yeah.
serenity here. And the factory was there.
quite a long run that they chased us towards the ghetto. And after we as they were chasing us out, the first thing we had to do is to grab whatever it is that we could take with us. And my father had made a big, huge pack and had it on his back. And they were chasing us, and I, the 12-year-old, also grabbed the bedspread, and I put lots of things in it, including a pillow and an electrical cord and some clothes and everything. But then, in the fullness of time, as we were running and running and running, this bag, the bedspread and the things, it started to unwind. It started to unwind, and I started to untie, and I started losing the things that I had there. So I was screaming to my father that, oh my God, I'm losing, it's untying, I'm losing things. But he could do nothing. We were being chased faster than lightning, and he got horribly mad at me. That, I mean, here we are in this horrible situation, and I'm whining and complaining that the thing is untying, and he was screaming, "You have no heart. You are entirely heartless, or a heart out of tin. That's all you have." So here I was, and finally, by a miracle of God, I didn't lose anything, and I was staggered into there, and it wasn't that far, but it felt extremely far to me.
Hey kids, what happens when you whine? 60 years later, you'll still feel bad about whining.
Yeah.
What?
Whining.
Whining. 60 years later, still feels bad about whining.
Grandma's telling us a story.
When you're being chased into the ghetto.
Be part of it.
As I was 12 at that time, just imagine that you are chased out of your home, and you have to think and grab whatever you need for survival. So tell me what
the essential for you.
Yeah. What would you grab?
Or whatever you would want to have.
Well, one
In
thing,
a limited way, because you cannot carry more than what you can carry. What would you get?
One thing I know I would bring is I have a backpack, and in the backpack it's full of just things that mean a lot to me and memories, maybe letters my friends wrote to me, and if I had gotten a medal or a prize from something, that would be in there.
Yeah.
And that's just basically my memories, my accomplishments in life, and everything that means a lot to me. So I'd pack that.
Okay.
I have a fleece blanket I would pack for me to keep warm.
Yes.
I would probably also pack baggy clothes, large clothes, in case I need to grow into them, if I grew older. And obviously food. And perhaps batteries, if batteries came in handy. I needed it for anything.
Yes, batteries are always very good. Of course, you need to have something that a radio that, or something. No, but a flashlight. I bet you the flashlight, but I don't know whether there were flashlights at that time.
Oh, yeah.
But tell me,
We had lanterns.
so for you, your memories and your friends was the first thing for you to be able to survive, to hold it next to you.
Also, I probably wouldn't be able to carry my dog. And my dog really means a lot to me. And I would probably bring a picture of her if I couldn't bring her.
Okay.
She really means a lot to me.
How about Jonathan?
Okay, Jonathan. Now,
A lot of what Becky said about I tried to bring a blanket, a flashlight, and some batteries to drive. I was thinking, like, the one thing I sort of remember for me would be the hard drive from on my computer with all with all my files. But basically, that's it's got my school projects and all my music and all my.
That's your life.
Yeah, it's basically just my life in a little box. So.
But
wait a minute. What about basic necessities of daily living?
That's what I was saying.
You know, bread,
that's what
water,
I was saying. I would bring like
a pillow.
I was saying I'd bring a flashlight and some batteries and most of the things my sister mentioned.
Yeah, well, you were saying that you, the one thing, I was carrying a pillow, and believe me, that was a very good thing, because, you know, as you sleep on the floor, it's very nice to have a pillow.
In my opinion, I never have really used pillows. I mean, if I need to sleep,
You have 6 of them on
and
your bed.
I have several on my bed, but I don't usually use them. I sleep on the mattress. So for me, my hands or my arms, or even a rock, or even the blanket itself, that is some extra.
Yeah, but the thing is that we just
That would be more
had
important.
the hard floor. We had the hard floor. So this pillow, I was lying on it instead of the marked mattress.
I remember, you know, we've had all these news accounts over the last couple of months of, you know, all the terrible things in Kosovo, and where they had all these refugees coming across the border.
What were they carrying?
And well, you know, but they told the same story that the soldiers came and they told them they had 5 minutes to get out or they would kill them, and it brought me back to, you know, this story from 60 years ago. And, you know, certainly I feel happier that at least this time the world stood up and didn't watch idly while the Holocaust was happening. But it was eerie. It was eerie to hear, you know, streams of refugees carrying what they could on their backs. And it brought back visions of you and your parents running down the street with a few minutes' notice. So, you know, it's sad that these things don't, that these things happen again.
The world
Again and again.
learns very slowly, doesn't it?
Yeah. As the saying goes, history repeats itself. This is the corner. So we are here.
And they were chasing us past here, down Savannah.
Okay.
That's it. Up.
You mean up the street?
Up
Yeah.
the street.
Yeah.
The Balvani.
The Vilna Vilna Ghetto.
Here
Here
stood the gate of the
gate of the big Ghetto Vilna. Door dem had men van 6 September
from here
from the 6th of September 1941 till the 23rd of September 1943, were chased to death more than 30,000 Jews. That's what it says there. I think I should take a photo of it.
Shuna was bricked off. There was a huge brick wall, and
From where to
all the other
Across the entrance.
across the entrance. So around all the streets of the ghetto, there were huge brick walls.
Yeah, where did you enter from? From where?
We entered from Strashuna, but then they did leave one gate where they got in and the workers of the ghetto got out. And that was on the Rudnitska street. And the
Rudninku, that's it. This is Rudninku.
That's exactly. So this was the only part of the ghetto where it was accessible to the outside.
Were you able to go out?
Where the workers that worked outside had to be checked out through the gate, and then they were being checked in. And the terrible thing was that they were trying to bring food in the ghetto. But if they were found with the food on them, they were killed. So they would throw things. If they heard that Murer, who was the bad Gestapo man in charge of the ghetto, if they heard that Murer was at the gate, the place was strewn with pieces of bread and stuff.
And that was for the...
Yeah, let me tell you
the ghetto.
a story that my friend Schneidman, who was my classmate in Tarbut, told me. His father worked somewhere in the countryside, so this was the only way for him to bring in some food to the ghetto. He was walking to the ghetto with some either potatoes, I forget now, some vegetables in his pants. As he approached the ghetto, he saw that Germans were standing at the gate to check the people. But it was too late for him to dispose of that food. So, and the severity of the punishment was quite severe. They would beat them up, they would punish them in all kind of ways.
Or kill them.
But he had no choice. So he took the chance and walked through with the loaded pants of the thing, and nobody palpated him, and he walked in. But his fear was so big, his adrenaline was pumping so hard, that he walked in beyond the ghetto. He was already safe, and a few meters from the gate, he had a heart attack and dropped dead.
Oh my God.
And that was, that's how charged they were, trying to bring in some food items. Now, when he...
Not cooking on the Sabbath.
So wait, you were stuck in the ghetto with 26 people per room, but
Yes.
you were stuck with a bunch of people from
No,
the Jewish mafia.
Not in our room, in the apartment, and we used the same little stove. Everybody had his own little stove, and of course, the Unterwelt, the mafia, the Jewish mafia, got to have the first chance at the stove, and so the only time where they would condescend to let everybody else use it would be on the Sabbath, when for Jewish law you could not cook. So my grandmother,
It's a great story.
decided that by golly, no slime is gonna keep her from cooking when it is lawful, and cook only when you break the Jewish law. So she took a frying pan and she pushed it in this very threatening, I guess this woman was trying to throw her off the stove. So she took this frying pan and she pushed it into that woman's nose so that her whole nose was black. And after which my grandmother started cooking during the week, and they never bothered her. Well, of course, the whole thing was 1 month that they killed her, but it wasn't the Jews; it was the Nazis that killed her.
Now,
Your grandmother?
When we got married, this lady told me that story first. I would never monkey with her anymore. She has her genes. It's her grandmother genes. Would I dare? Do I want to have a frying pan pushed against my nose? Come on.
I don't think so.
Now, you know why I'm...
So this is...
I'm wrong. I was taken away when I got scarlet fever, and they took me to the infected barracks.
Doorway. So right where you would walk.
And my parents came to save me 2 weeks later. So I was out, very, very involuntarily, because I was terribly scared.
Oh, that must have been terrifying.
So then, when there was the so-called Gele Akties, which is when they took everybody who were non-essential workers and family. No, I'm sorry, the essential workers got the yellow shine certificate. Those were called the life certificates. They had the right to survive. Everybody else was killed. So my parents wanted to save me because they got, you got a certificate, the owner of the yellow certificate had the right also to take his wife and 2 children. A third child was too bad. 2 children. So they got a certificate for me. So they ran to the infectious barracks to save me, and they got me out.
Oh my God.
Yes, what was
With
that?
the certificate.
John,
What did you ask?
Your parents got a wife and your dad got
I got the yellow,
certificate
the life certificate.
for a wife and 2 children.
Yeah, well,
You
so-
only, but you're
But
I
he only
had
one.
But then
Did
we
you
also,
save someone else?
yeah, we saved somebody else.
Oh.
Well, you know, you couldn't get a certificate go to waste, but not this one. Unfortunately, on this one he didn't. They were too eager to run and
get you.
catch me, because otherwise, if they left me there, I mean, I would be a goner. Very kind and noble Colonel Plagge.
No, Major.
I'm sorry, Major Plagge, who was in charge of the vehicle repair of the army,
Of the German
and who
army.
had called HKP. That's in
HKP.
HKP. HKP.
HKP.
He went to Berlin to persuade them that he cannot continue repairing those very essential vehicles if he doesn't have his Jews. But they were liquidating the ghetto. So he made them put his workers and their families into this work camp, still under SS. And it was established here in those 2 big buildings that were actually built by a Jewish philanthropist. I forget, I don't think it was Rothschild, but somebody like that, for the very
people.
poor Jews of Vilna. And it was called the poor houses.
Ormeheiser
Or
in Yiddish, the poor houses.
Okay, but I want to get out
The
from
convincing part of the Major Plagge, who convinced the headquarters that these Jews were essential to the war effort of the Germans.
Yes.
So
And unfortunately, he was just like Schindler. He was just, and he was better than Schindler because he didn't make any money. Schindler did it for profit or stuff, sort of.
Yeah, well, there was a business part involved
A business
there.
part, not
Not
with,
at the end, maybe.
not
but,
with
yeah.
Major Plagge.
But Major Plagge did it out of...
Not with Major Plagge. Major Plagge did it only to save his Jews. Permission to establish his workers in those 2 big buildings.
Excuse me.
You have to understand that there was entirely, everything was empty around here. No buildings here, no buildings there. There were no yellow little things there. this was a completely empty space with barbed wire all around it. These poor houses were very nice. They had water, but they have no sewers. So I don't know what the poor people did, during the normal times. But when we were put into this camp, what they did is on this side of this building, they made a ditch. And everybody had to go and do their business in that. They put like something on top of it, but it was so dirty that, it was just the same as a ditch. So, my parents decided that they are going with their neighbors. They decided that they are gonna put a pail in a cubby hole so that we can go privately, do our business, and then just, in fact, they did it even more than that they hired somebody to empty the pail. So the interesting thing is that I remember that we lived in this building, and there was either a small addition, a two-story addition, and there you entered into a hallway from here, and there was a stairway into the second floor. So under the stairway there was a cubby hole, and in that cubby hole they put that pail. And one day I was 14 years old, and I was very aware that we need a hiding place very badly. But there was nothing forthcoming, and my father was not that way inclined. So one day I sit on the pail and I see that there is a hole in the floor. So I got interested in that. But then next day I come, and there is no trace of the hole. The floor is good as new. So next time on March 27th, when 1943, when they said that the camp is encircled and something horrible is going to happen, I ran to see what happened to my hole, and one of the neighbors was going down. So I immediately ran to get my mother, and we went into that, and it appears that that was the so-called Kinderaktion, when all the children were taken and killed. I don't know whether they would have taken me as a child or not. I was a tall child, but it was much safer in the so-called Malina.
Excuse me, was it 43 or
43? 43.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry.
44.
That was already 44.
44.
Okay, because we
had to be 44.
We moved into this HKP in September of 43, and the ghetto was liquidated in September of 43. So that's when...
so it had to be March 44.
March 44.
Of course.
Then my father and my cousin's husband, Lolek Szelupski, who was an engineer, they really perfected that hiding place into tremendousness, because instead of just being the basement that you came from, that first floor, they dug an underground passageway into a bricked off other parts of the basement. And that was extremely important, because then when they liquidated this HKP, they actually found and killed everybody in that first part. But fortunately, they didn't see this underground, and we were saved.
How many people were able to be saved?
I don't know. It was supposed to be like just 15 or 20, but we were found out by other people. And obviously, you could not turn away anybody, because anybody turned away will tell the Germans about it. So
could tell the Germans.
well, could and would, because they would be mad. And so
Would people do that?
yes.
Really, yeah?
The thing, so the fact was that however perfect that hiding place was, they forgot to do one thing. They had no ventilation.
Yeah.
So we got so stuffy that the candle could not burn.
Oh my God.
And people were going crazy.
From lack of oxygen.
Lack of oxygen, and were screaming. On the other hand, the Germans were around, and that was a thing of a betrayal of life and death. So so the crazy people were killed with bricks
To protect everyone else.
Everybody
to save
else.
everyone else.
And we were sitting, I was holding my mother in my lap. She suddenly started hallucinating, but fortunately, she hallucinated quietly.
So how long were you down in the hiding place?
It felt like it was years, but I think it was only a couple days, 3 days.
And then how did you know that you could come
That's
out?
it. We didn't know. People would come in and then they would jump back. That the sad thing was that my cousin and her husband that helped perfect this Malina, this hiding place. They entered into this hiding place, and he had a gun. So he decided that he wants to go out. And she was begging him that, I want to stay, I want to stay.
Oh, his wife?
His wife, Eva.
Your
name
cousin?
was Eva.
Mm.
And I still, she was a beautiful girl. You have the picture in the thing. And she was, then must have been 21 or 2, and she was saying, if I could only live to be 30, I don't want any more. It would be sufficient. And then I look at myself, here I am 70. And
So
she
she was
said if she could only live to the age of 30, that it would have been so beautiful.
Yeah, well, he was self-assured about having a gun.
So
Yeah,
he went
So
out
he
and got
got
killed?
out,
And
they
both got killed.
Both got killed.
Oh.
The other thing that I forgot to tell you, or at least didn't tell you, that still in 1943, we were under the SS. I mean, however wonderful Major Plagge was, we were under the SS. So 2 people ran away from the camp.
Mm-hmm.
And we had appels, roll calls. So when they caught those 2 people, a man and a woman, they made in there where that yellow truck is, they made the Jews of the camp build a hanging
Gallows?
gallows. And they took the 2, had the whole camp stand and look at it. But I guess I wasn't there, so I was privileged not to be there. And suddenly there is a cry, "Mama!" And a little girl, a little child, runs out and runs to that woman. And
To the mother?
To the mother, the one that's going to be hanged. So So of course the Nazis killed the child and hung the parents. Well, those weren't men and wife, but never mind. But that was not enough of a reprisal for that horrible thing that they did. They ran away. So they decided to kill a certain amount of people that were of the inmates. So they came and they chased out all the women and children onto this side.
Don't walk away, just show it.
Onto this side that was much bigger than it is now, in a grassy thing, and they made us all stand in a row and Kittel, the obnoxious Gestapo man in charge of our killing, and he was the most handsome man. It was with green eyes, and he was just standing there and smiling and looking at us. And I had nightmares for years afterwards with those eyes. I saw those eyes looking at me, and I was looking. And you see those little windows, those basement windows. They're like that on the other side, like this one. You can see there, a basement window. And I was standing there, and I think, oh, if I could only be like a mouse and get into that basement window, it would be so wonderful to just disappear in there. And then we were only women and children. Then suddenly there must have been a movement of his finger or something, and the Lithuanians that were encircling us started grabbing us and putting us into a black van. Not us. No, I wasn't taken. Black van that was standing right here in between those two buildings. And the Lithuanians in the meantime were banging us with the rifle butts. So my mother says, well, we don't have to be beaten up before we get killed. But I said no, and I was fooling her. I wanted to live so badly, I was fooling her. At that time, my father suddenly broke through and joined us. All this had a final ending because they took the 36 people that they wanted and they let us out. And here there were those people that were going to get killed, and I was so happy. We ran up to this very upper floor there, and we looked down, and we looked down at the black truck that they were taking the people, and there was a man that was begging, was on his knees begging the Germans not to take his child and his wife. But of course they didn't listen to him. But the sad thing is that I was happy. I was there and I was free. It wasn't me there near that truck. He lived Gary. He lived on the very top floor. So then, when the Lithuanians came to take him down, he just jumped on to the railings and went and ran away.
Wow.
So here he was
6 years old.
7. He slid down the railing?
Yeah, down the railing, and he survived. He ran to his father in his father's workshop. So here he was, an illegal child, and all the children will be killed. So
Were killed?
Yeah, will be killed if they find any.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, the neighbor where the room where they lived had a child just his age, and he was killed. So she couldn't stand having him around. So we decided that we better keep him in our room so that he can be close to the hiding place, because our room was here. Well, I mean, I forget the second. And then he could just run into the hiding place. So other people were saying, no, don't you dare, reveal the place of this Marlina, of this hiding place, because Nina, that's his mother, is a big babbler, and she can never keep a secret, and we'll all get killed because of that. So my father told them that the child is going to be killed now. We may be killed or not be killed because of her babbling. That will be later. But the child is the one that is
destined to be killed now.
The danger, immediate danger now. So so here he is. They are here. Well, he died, but anyway.
But they survived.
But they survived.
Had a family and
Had a family.
for 40
yes.
years after the
That's
war.
right.
Yeah.
So.
Became an architect, lived in Mexico City.
Well, that was very brave of your father.
And
Yeah.
did Nina babble?
No, she didn't babble. She was a smart woman. She babbled, I guess, the things that she got. She was a gossiper.
Yeah, that's different.
I tried to read, and I was also learning English.
Whoa!
And I was trying to read Gone with the Wind.
You're kidding.
And here I was at the brink of being killed, and I was crying bitter tears for poor Butler.
Oh, poor
The
Red Butler.
unfairness of it, the horror of it, the thing. Then, after we were in, there were those high brick walls, and the street was dug up, so I couldn't walk there with you to show you exactly where it was. It was a very tiny, circumscribed place. This little street that was dug up, and then a couple more. This was a very small place, and we were all entirely locked in with those big, with cement and brick. So the first couple months was just pure terror, where we were afraid that we were going to be killed any minute. But after a couple months, we were just locked in. My father and my mother would go out to work, and I had to try to get some food and start cooking for them when they came back. But there wasn't much food and there wasn't much cooking. So my big thing was walking around with my good friends. My best friend, the boy Nachik Bak, wasn't there. He got killed. But there were two other good friends. One was Luba Kantarovich. That was the one that I was in competition with in the Russian school. So, and I forgave her for winning the competition, actually through my noble deed. And then there was another girl called Nina Kaplinska. And we were locked up, and we were always walking and talking and dreaming about of what we're going to do and how life will be. And of course, we were very interested on how we're going to look. Because, you know, I mean, 12, and then we were 13, and then we were 14, and we were getting very interested in boys, but a boy never looked at us. Nobody was interested in us. So, I hope.
Until I came around.
That's it. But that was much later, you see. So I thought that after we get out, and this circumscribed place, the walls were so close together that there was not one ray of sun, never. In those 2 years, I have never had a ray of sun glance on my face. So I thought that I hope that when I get out and I'll get a little tanned and I will look much prettier and boys might be interested in me. Well, the other thing was that we were hoping to get into water or trees. You see, there was not a blade of grass, so forget trees. So therefore, trees and leaves are so very important for me. When we got out, the very first thing I did is try to go to a beach and swim.
And did you?
I did. But also, we wanted very much, we needed to be able to get books. I mean, books take you out of the place. You know, here we were sort of locked up, but in a book, you fly and you are in a completely different place. So that's why books were more important than food. But in the ghetto, there was a library, but everybody else had the same genius idea that they wanted books. So I went there, and it was so crowded, And so I stood there and I waited, and nobody ever let me have a book.
How long did you wait?
I waited hours, but you know what happened? It appears that as I came in, I should have taken a number. So I just went there and I stood there and hoping that I can get up and go to the books. So after a few hours, I gave up in disgust and I left. But then some kind person in the fullness of time told me that what you did, genius child, you should have taken something. I mean, you should have done something. So I was able to get books while I was in the ghetto.
Do you remember what book you got?
I'm not sure. I think I started to read Gone with the Wind, and I got it in English, and I got a Polish-English dictionary, and my parents got a lady that was teaching me some English. So I was all into reading this Gone with the Wind, and I was crying bitterly about. Have you read Gone with the Wind?
I personally
There is this. Have you seen the movie Gone with the Wind?
No.
Well, so I was crying about the horror and the sadness and the tragedy of poor Red Butler that loved Scarlett so much, and this unrequited love, it just killed me. So here I am, about to be killed and crying for poor Red Butler. But the other thing, I wanted very much to study. As life went on and there was no school, it became such a thirst to be able to learn. My parents got me a teacher that started to give me some geometry lessons. And I love geometry ever since.
I wish I shared your sympathy.
Okay, well, this was something that was just, this was like a crack onto the world, the geometry. So then, when I got out and I was able to prepare for school and go to school, I skipped 3 grades. Those 3 grades that I lost, I skipped them. Well, let's put it this way: world geography was one of the victims of my 3 years of absence. But I made up in math and chemistry and physics, and I think some history. History, I'm not nearly as good as I would have been if I had the 3 years. And of course, I went to after that was a Russian school. What would you, if you were locked up with only 2 of your friends, what would you dream and want most? What would you want most?
More friends, more people.
More people. How about you?
Well, it depends on how much room we had, how many people there were originally, but no, I love the woods, I love the beach.
That's it.
And I share your passion for, I would want to walk in the woods, be able to go swimming, get the tan.
Yes, get a tan, definitely.
Nice dark tan, and just be able to see the sun.
You would want
to live with my life and be happy.
Yes. And you would want to have more of your friends.
Well, have more exposure to people. I mean, if you're locked up there with just a few.
Well, I'll tell you. I was so. I don't know. I was not, I guess, a very nice little girl because I hated my nasty neighbors more than I hated the Nazis. Because they were mean to me.
How?
This was my parents would go out to work, and I stayed behind, and one day they didn't come back, and I was petrified that what's going on? Maybe they were grabbed, maybe they were killed, maybe. So this nasty neighbor laughed at me and she says, ha ha ha, they're not coming, you'll be all by yourself. So I hated her. I hated her with a passion. And then there was another neighbor that was in HKP, that was not in not in the ghetto. That was in those, the camp which we saw with those, in those two big buildings.
Oh.
So the thing is that there were no books, only the books that people brought with them. So if you brought a book, let's say, and somebody else brought another book, so you were able to exchange, and this was the only way that you could get any books. And once I exchanged a book, and this nasty neighbor took that book, the one that I was supposed to read, and she insisted on reading it first, and by that time the owner of the book wanted it back, and I never got to read it, and I never forgave her.
What book was it?
I don't remember. I don't remember because I never got to read it. I think the one that my exchange book was Gone with the Wind. I had the Gone with the Wind.
Cool.
And that was what I guess books were the great love and desire and thirst of my life. That and trees.
You see,
You went in the woods with you?
what happened is this, that when the Russians retreated,
Should we go to stand your grandpa?
the war broke out June 22nd, was a Sunday. And when I came home from the river, from Vilnius, we went out on the boats. I decided to run away with the retreating Russian soldiers. So my mother made me a backpack, and with a friend who lived on
Так и было.
in the direction of Minsk. But the Germans went around Minsk from both sides. And when I came to Minsk, it was already taken and circled. So I went back and I walked. The people robbed me of my bike and clothes and backpack. I came back in a pair of pants. Barefoot. And I came here to this house. And a day or two later, I went to the barber on Savichu, which is the next Ulica Savichu. Next, the next street, and I'll show you in a minute where it is. And there, a German jeep was running around, and I had a J on my arm.
To show that you're
That I was a Jew. J is for Jude. So I saw the jeep and I got scared, so I ran into the barber shop, which I was going anyway, but he saw me. And he ran into the barber shop and grabbed me, and I said, well, there were a couple of people waiting, maybe he wouldn't know which. I took off my armband. Maybe he wouldn't recognize it, but he did. He had his eagle eye, so he grabbed me and put me on the jeep, and then went around on Vielka Street and grabbed a few more young people and took us to the park to St. Bernard's Park, Bernardinka. And then we stayed overnight there because they said in the morning we're going to clean up some of the bombardment effects of the war. So, I mean, it wasn't guarded really well. I could have gotten out of it. But I say, so we'll go to work. So we'll go to work. It was no big deal. Instead, in the morning, we were packed about 25 people to a truck, and they took us to Ponary. And we were the first victims of Ponary.
This was
a
week after.
Yeah, it was, no, it was July 12th maybe,
So
July 13th, I'm not sure. That in this Ponary forest between July 41 to July 44, the Nazis with their local collaborators have killed 100,000 people, of whom 70,000 were Jews, men, women and children. Besides the 70,000 Jews, there were Poles, Lithuanians, and a lot of Soviet prisoners.
I mean, you were one of those.
I was one of the very first parties brought here
To be executed.
to be executed.
And you were, in their eyes, you were
By a truck from the park of St. Bernardin from the city, where we were kept overnight and told that we are going to clean some of the bombardment ruins. And so we could have run away actually, but we didn't even try. And then we were loaded up on the truck and brought up to here. And it's hard for me to know where. I have a feeling that we came through a gate from here, but I'm not sure. I think that it possibly was here. And we were taken somewhere there, a little bit farther, down into the forest. The truck stopped, the driver went out, and we saw two machine guns in front of us. A German was running around with a camera, and we were told that we have to be quiet, not talk, not to make any commotion, or else the machine guns will go off. And one by one had to get off the truck and march toward a grave that was previously prepared. And there was a mixture of Lithuanian civilians and uniformed people who were shooting us with handguns in the back of the heads. And gruesome and terrible as it looked, I was 17 years old. I didn't believe that I was just going to die now. I got off the truck and was marching where all the others went ahead before me. And they were drunk.
the Lithuanians.
The Lithuanian executioners were drunk. And I got not far from the grave, maybe, I don't know, 10, 15 meters from the grave. I stumbled and fell where the shot went, and at the same time, the shot went off. And he obviously interpreted it that I fell because he shot me. And I stayed quiet. Subsequently, victims came, and I don't know, one of them fell on me, on top of me. And then many trucks were coming. I imagine all the people who were in the park locked up, which was, I don't know how many. And I would imagine there might have been maybe 15, 20 trucks loaded with people.
We should go over to the graves, and you could tell about the graves, what happened at the graves there rather than here.
All right. Let's walk down there.
You're all locked up in this.
So, I guess that's what it was, yes. A big grave, and people were going from the truck to the grave and being shot in the back of their heads. And then I stumbled, fell, I wasn't killed, and then the executions, the killings went on and on and on for hours. And I was just lying there pretending dead. And then everything quieted down. The machine, there were many people who were in the grave, and some were around the grave. Most of them were killed, some of them were wounded and still in agony. The machine guns went off and sprayed with bullets around the grave and in the grave. And I was not wounded. I guess the corpse on top of me perhaps was protective, I don't know. There was a moment that I don't recall where possibly I lost consciousness. I'm not sure. And then everything was very quiet. I was still very scared to move. And after it was very quiet for a while, I dug myself out from under the guy on top of me and started to, and that was the most terrible, the most terrifying moment in my life, because the place was surrounded with barbed wire. So I went towards where the gate was, where we entered. And as I went there were two guards. And one of them saw me and took a shot, but I was still quite far away. So he didn't hit me. So as you can see, this is a hilly terrain, up and down. I just ran back, and I ran back to the grave. And that was the most scary moment, because I was well and alive, and I knew that the guard is going to come and kill me. I couldn't climb over the fence because they would see me from distance and I would be an easy target. So my only way out was to dig quickly as I can under the barbed wire with bare hands, and I was terrified. It was the most scary moment in my life, because I was afraid that they can come any moment and kill me if I don't get out in time. But I don't know what their reasoning was. Either they were drunk, or they figured that I can't get out anyway. They didn't hurry. So I managed to crawl out. I remember scratching my back. I was crawling down on my belly down, scratched up my back, and I got out and I was running down a hill. I cannot tell you in what direction I was running, I don't know. That it is more likely here than there is because after I crawled out, I was running down a hill. And there it looked like I would be running up a hill. And I remember running down a hill. And I ran, and then I saw a house, a cottage, where a Polish family lived. And I went in. I was bloody and I was scared, and I was telling them in a very disconnected way, I guess, what happened, but they listened and they understood, and they were very kind. They were very nice. I washed up. I changed my shirt. They gave me one of their own shirts, and I walked back to the city. I remember walking many hours. Following that, I really didn't, I cannot say that I celebrated well. I was just walking and walking until I came to our apartment house on Bakstu. I think it was Bakstu 8 or number 6. I forget now what the number was, 8, I think. And I told it to my family, and all the people in that apartment house were Jews. When I told them, they didn't believe me. They said I was out of my head. It's not possible. It's an unbelievable story. And I remember somebody said, well, I ran away, I lost my friend, was killed on the road, on the bicycle, running from Vilna to Minsk. And I underwent some trauma, and now I'm hallucinating. But my family believed me, and my father was a clever man, and he understood. He says, well, their intent is to kill us all out. And so subsequently, we stayed still in the city. And subsequently, when they started to talk about the formation of a ghetto, my father said, no ghetto for us. We're getting out. And we went to Nemenchine. And That he would hide us in case of need. As I walked out from the forest, I saw Stepanas Nera, the Lithuanian who lived in our house, and he came out from another corner of the forest, and I backed off, but he saw me, and our eyes met. So we were friends for 3 months, and I was embarrassed to back off after he saw me because it would mean that I didn't trust him. So I didn't want to insult him, to express this distrust. So I went ahead and joined him, and we walked, and he says, "Where are you going?" I say, "I'm going to hire the Kasparovich to take some merchandise, the turpentine, from the factory to the city." So he said, "Well, I'll go along with you." "What are you doing?" I say, "I'm walking with a rifle." Never seen with a rifle. He said, "I'm just hunting rabbits." Then I saw a handgun sticking out from his pocket. And we went and made some small talk. So he left me somewhere here, says, "Why don't you wait, I'll go into the Kasparovich and I'll make the arrangements with him." Because officially he was the director of the factory, of my father's factory, as a Lithuanian side by the Germans. So I stood there and I wonder, how the heck is he going to talk to him? He doesn't know Polish or Russian. He talks only Lithuanian. Well, I let it go with that. He comes out a few minutes later with his rifle pointing at me, and he says, "Get in." I say, "Stepanas, but we're friends." And he says, "Get in or else you get shot on the spot." I mean, with a very firm murderous voice. So I saw he meant business. So he got me in, locked me up in a structure adjacent to this the previous house that was here. This is a new house now. And he locked me up. So I asked Vincent, who was 2 years older than me, a very nice, handsome kid, who was the brother-in-law of Genya. And I say, "Vince, let me out, let me out." He says, "You heard what he said. If I let you out, you let out Vovka, you kaput." I mean, he couldn't tell him exactly, but he got the message. If you let him out, you are dead. You're gone. I murder you. So I said, "What shall I do? Can I crawl out?" It was pitch dark there. "Can I crawl out through the ceiling?" So he says, "No, just knock out the door." So I knocked the door, and it didn't budge. So I went to the wall of that structure and ran, and with the mass of my body, I threw myself at the door and knocked it out. And then I came here, right here, with the door knocked out. And there he heard the first knock. He didn't move away far enough. I was impatient. I didn't know what was going on. So he stands in front of me with his rifle at me, and there is a dog between us here running and barking, going like mad. And the neighbor next door, Kasparovich, Boleslav, is egging me on and says, "Vovka, throw yourself at him, you're strong, you can kill him, murder him." So I look and I say, "Gee," and he's his rifle is at me. I say, well, how do I get to him? I mean, you know, I'll have a belly full of bullets before I get to him. So suddenly I jumped, and there was a structure here, a stable of sorts. Maybe it was this, I'm not sure. I started to run around it. So he ran around the same structure. And I came out back, and I jumped over a fence, and I was a much faster runner than he was. I was more motivated, obviously. And I started to run in the field. He made the same circle, put his gun, his rifle on the fence, and was aiming at me. And I turned my head, and I see he was aiming at me. So I dropped to the ground, and at that split second, he fired. And because I fell, it missed me. I jumped to my feet, started to run, and I was zigzagging, making sharp turns, so he couldn't take a steady aim. And the moment I would make a turn, a shot would go off, and I heard the whistle of the bullet, but I missed it. And then I threw off, I had a sheepskin to run faster. I tried to take off my stival, a high boot, and that didn't come off easily, so I let go. There was no time to take it off. So luckily for me, because these were boots that I used for the next 3 years to wear, or else I would freeze to death. And I zigzagged through the field, which at the time was quite long, but the forest grew in, and apparently I was running in this direction. There was no structure, so anything. It was a long field. And I ran into the forest, and I thought there were 5 shots, but Vincent, in 1987, told me that he fired 3 times and missed me, and by then I was in the forest, and at that time it was futile for him to shoot. And in the forest, though I was safe from him, but I was so scared and so charged that I ran and ran and ran until I was totally exhausted and fell and cried and sobbed. In this place, the Hitlerite murderers and their local collaborators murdered 403 Jews on September 20th, 1941, men, women, and children. May their memory be eternal. Felicia Peszkowska warned us about the impending murder of the mentioned Jews. My father and I and my mother and my brother went out of the house in a hurry. My mother and brother went to a hiding place on the factory, and my father and I were on the outskirts of the forest near a house. In the morning I went to see to hide the Gasparovich village, and my father went to dig out the hidden handguns near the house.
He went back.
He went back to dig out the hidden handguns. A policeman was waiting for him, And when he approached the house, he jumped out, arrested him, and no matter what my father tried to do, with carrot and stick, it didn't work. So he brought him back to the Nemenchen, where all the Jews of Nemenchen were gathered, and they were told they're going to the ghetto of Vilna. And they all were taking all kind of heavy packages and the utensils and food and warm coats and what have you. And my father was telling them, it's useless, leave it behind. We're not going to the ghetto, they're going to murder us. And nobody believed him. So then, when they came to that point on the road, suddenly the whole group was ordered to walk towards this place somewhere here.
Now your mother and brother were among them?
They were, that's a different story.
Oh, okay.
Unrelated to this. And they brought all these Jews. There were 3 people per line, and there was one shooter for each 3 people. And they were, every other shooter was on a different side of the Jews. So then they were all marching, and there was one Lithuanian in front of them. And when he came to that spot, he turned around, signaled with his hand, and then the shooters all, from being 2 sides of the Jews, all lined up to be on one side so they wouldn't shoot each other. And there was suddenly a barrage of shooting towards the people on this piece of land between the 2 bodies of the forest. Some people fell to the ground, some people climbed the trees. My father decided that he wants to die rapidly if he is to be shot and not have a slow death, be wounded and agonizing until he died. So he stood up straight, and he saw that no bullet hit him. They were whistling all around him, but it didn't hit him. So he decided, well, let me try to run away. And some people ran away towards the main road. And he understood that at the main road there would be guards to kill them. So he ran towards the body of the forest. And the shooters were aiming at the bulk of the people running away from here, not towards them. So they didn't pay attention to him. And the Polish people who were witnessing it, some of the people who were still finishing to dig the grave, were egging him on, run fast. And then a woman, the pharmacist's wife, Mrs. Bernstein, Esther Bernstein, who was the mother of my classmate, saw him run, and she ran after him. And she started to scream, wait a minute. And he says, run, run, run fast, run after me. And then another kid, who is now one of the farmers in Connecticut,
Colchester.
in Colchester, he told me the story, that he saw my Leifer, was his name, Yankel Reifer. He saw my father run. So he says, well, he knew my father was a clever man. So he said, well, he'll do what Gdud does. And he ran after him, and that's how he survived. I didn't know that until I met him, during your wedding, or following your wedding. Anyway.
So out of all those Jews that were brought here, how many managed to run away?
Nobody knows, but probably about 100 managed to run away. However, in the course of the 3 following years, maybe 20 survived because the others were caught thereafter, died from hunger, from cold weather, from the harsh winters, from betrayal,
Polish partisans.
from Polish partisans, Polish partisans who killed them, from betrayal of peasants, from all kinds. You have to understand that the Germans made a decree that any Jews, live or dead, if somebody brought a Jew, live or dead, would be awarded, I forget now, 1 kilogram or 2 kilograms of salt, which was very much needed for the farmers. So there was an incentive of 2 kilograms of salt. It was a big thing for people, and some people who were so inclined who would probably do it anyway, but that was an additional incentive. My mother and brother were killed here 2 days after that event, who were caught separately, along with another a group of 25 people who ran away from the initial thing, and they were caught, and then my mother and brother were caught, and they gathered them and kept them in the jail of Nemenchin. And then on the second day of Jewish New Year, 1941, at 1:10 o'clock in the afternoon, they were all shot here. I know the time because I was about 5 miles away from here, and at that time I heard an incredible shooting, like, endless shooting, and I did not know what was going on. Of course, I didn't have a way to know. I was in a Zakopa, a bunker from World War I, hidden. But I had the shooting, and I looked. It was 1:10 in the afternoon. 2 weeks later, when I came in contact with maybe Pashkovsky or maybe somebody else, they told me that that was the time when my mother and brother were being killed, along with the other 25 Jews.
Yeah, three times.
One more.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, you did. Come on. 1, 2, 3, go.
I cope.
No, I mean, too. I'm just gonna laugh and you go.
Oh, we used to
We used to
laugh.
laugh so hard, like a fart. Okay, you ready?
Okay.
So what is this?
It's a polka from Dimension.
Uh-huh.
Dimension your viewer.
And he used to play it to us when we were little kids.
Yeah. Okay. 1, 2, 3.
Something was happening when we were going. This part is a very beautiful chord right here. It's a very beautiful part of the song. You don't want to hurry it. So right there. So let's try that part.
No, I don't know.
Come on, don't give up. What is
Let's
it?
go. Let's try it. Okay.